Yeah, I don't know if you kind of want to start off with who you are and maybe where you came from within Allentown and schooling life, et cetera, how we know each other, whatever you feel.
But just a little bit about myself, right? So I'm Evan McCants-Goldman, born and raised in Allentown, PA, close to the West End Youth Center. Me and you go, way back to back to the Muhlenberg Elementary School days. Run the playground. It's actually like, it's always so funny. Like, I feel like we actually became friends like much later. Yeah, so I went to some public schooling. I went to some private schooling. I ended up switching out of the Allentown public schools and halfway through sixth grade. I ended up at the Swain School and then went to Moravian Academy to finish out my Allentown area schooling experience. Currently working as an attorney, public defense. I do parole revocation proceedings in New York City, and that work's been definitely interesting, very challenging, and it's a lot more in line with kind of where I had wanted to go when I set out to go to law school. I've been in New York for almost going on like 6-7 years, so it's been a minute. But yeah, no, my family has like pretty deep Allentown roots. My parents are both born and raised in Allentown. Grandmother moved there from New York. Other grandmother moved there from Jersey, so always around the area.
So, I mean, you touched on you in New York. How'd you get to New York? What took you out of Allentown? I guess that's a place to start.
Yeah, I definitely knew in high school that I kind of wanted to get out of Allentown to go to college, and I ended up going to Vanderbilt University down in Nashville, Tennessee. I've always wanted to just kind of pop around the world, have experiences. My perspective on Allentown over the years has definitely changed. I used to definitely whine about it a lot more, and I'm really glad to see a lot of growth there, a lot of cool projects that are developing. And then after I finished my undergrad degree, I actually came back to Allentown, was working for about a year, working as like a preschool teacher there. It was kind of funny, a little pit stop. And then I just knew that I wanted to be in New York for law school. This one of the top two places I wanted to be there, like maybe Philly. No, I ended up lucking out. I did well enough on the LSAT to get into NYU, which was like my dream school at the time. I remember like visiting there and being like, yo, this place is great. It's like right in the middle of the city. The city's awesome. Like, go there, get the law degree, good times. New York, I feel like it has definitely a magnetism to it, right? It's just a place people find themselves in.
Yeah, I mean, every time I'm in that city, really, I am just astounded by how big everything is. Like, I've been there over 2 dozen times in my life, like through growing up, enough times to just know about New York. But every time I go, yo, I can't even see the sky, like between these buildings. Like, what's up? So I get that, man. You have a little bit of a different story than some of the people I've talked to so far, and it starts with some of the schooling. And so maybe you could talk about that on some of your perspectives within the Allentown School District and how you think it served you or didn't serve you, and maybe any perspectives that you may have on it, now in its current state.
So I haven't kept up too much, with the good old ASD, but my experience was relatively good, I guess, up until the sixth grade. I think the issues with Allentown public schools are very common for any overburdened public school system, right? Like Muhlenberg was like kind of known as being like a really good place to send your kids. I know that in the years that followed, and also my experience then at Trexler, right, where the class sizes are too big, teachers can't really contain like all these kids who are especially like a bunch of sixth graders. It's an age where kids can be terrible. Like, so I think a number of factors that kind of all just converged at the time. I had my family had just experienced the loss of both of my maternal grandparents in the last like 2 years. So my mom and my dad saw my grades slipping, and felt that I was kind of hanging around some kids that they didn't think were going to be benefiting my future, right? So they put me into a very small private school, and after like some slight rebelling, I guess, right, it worked out very well in terms of me getting the structure that I needed and not having kind of those are distractions that, I found myself with, in public school. Right. So like all my test scores had dropped. My mom was like, absolutely not. This is not like, you're not going down this path. And, I think that, my sister also went to Allentown Public Schools. She's 8 grades older than me, right? So she experienced a very different system, I think. But, she also had, her own struggles. And I think that, in any really large system, it's easy to kind of get a little lost because if you only have a certain number of, staff and teachers, right? They can't necessarily give every kid who needs it that individual attention, the kind of like nurturing and care that you were able to get in, small settings, even, looking at her experience, right, where she was really lucky that, she took advantage of some extracurricular type activities. And also, I know my mom did a lot of research into, how to just overcome certain obstacles that are in the way in terms of like getting, college application fee waivers and things like that aren't necessarily, well known if you're, an outsider to this higher education system. And that, I think a lot of guidance counselors kind of do some people wrong and not kind of opening their eyes to certain opportunities, right? So I think, having the benefit of, that knowledge, right, that my mom had gained from, going through the whole system with my sister. And then, just also having, been in a private school where, these people are really with it. Like I know my guidance counselor at Moravian, right? Like the only reason I went to Vanderbilt was because she was like, I think you'd like this school. Here, apply. It's free and you don't have to do anything. And then like one thing leads to another. And like I fell in love with the school when I visited, right? And it's like opened up a lot of different opportunities that way.
Yeah, man, I'd say so. Geez, if it all works out for the right reasons, I'd say it worked out. Vanderbilt to NYU to practice in law in New York City. I think you're doing it right, and your parents really kind of had the foresight to make that happen. Yeah, you mentioned earlier how some of the perspectives that you have of the town now are a little bit different than they were, maybe a couple years back, or maybe even 5-7 years back when you're in college and back in getting to New York. Can you talk a little bit about that, about those different perspectives, how they have changed, and what do you think about the city and the area?
It's just kind of crazy to think about like the Allentown that we grew up with, right? Like you remember like downtown Allentown, you couldn't go there after 3 p.m. because everything would be closed, right? Like, and everybody would be like, oh, like it's very sketchy down there. Like, I'm not going to go downtown. And now it's like, high-end cuisine, you can like, get, all these like breweries, delicious foods, like, so it's just like that, I think is like a nice little like microcosm of how the town has changed where, this area that used to just be like, you can't go down there, nothing good's happening to like, okay, this is like a hub of, I know there's like tons of new businesses. There's a lot going on. And it seems that, the city has really taken steps to, focus on, growth, right? Rather than just like kind of maintaining, a certain status quo. It seemed like, we were born into a time when, the area had, kind of bottomed out in terms of like, the opportunities. I look now, right? And obviously New York is amazing, but there's definitely certain things that just aren't really attainable, right, in New York City, right? Like I could definitely never afford to buy any property around here, right? Like you can't necessarily, start your own kind of businesses like in New York without having tons and tons of like seed money and a lot of, almost like insider knowledge about how to like manage this really complex, oversaturated system. Whereas like, I look at Allentown as like a great place for, people looking to make dreams come true, in certain ways, right? Like there's a lot going on. The area is, easily accessible from, big cities. It's growing, and also I just kind of get the appeal a little more of like it's not like a suburb, right? But it's also like it's not, as dense as a place like New York. So it has a different kind of balance and flow to it, that I used to not appreciate as much, but definitely have like gained a little bit of appreciation for, just things like having a car, like you have a car, man. It's awesome. You don't have to like call an Uber literally every time you want to go somewhere or hop on the train with like, a billion other people in a pandemic just to get down the block. So That's nice.
No, and that's things you definitely weigh. And as you think about that, and you think about some of the deficiencies of two different perspectives of Allentown versus New York versus Tennessee. I don't know where exactly in Tennessee Vanderbilt is, but you've been a couple different places and bigger populations. If you look out, is there anything that Allentown could do to be a little bit more appealing to its current residents or to attract other people?
Thing that always gets me is the lack of public transportation options, right? It is obviously much easier because people, just have their own cars. But, I think about, like just being able to like go out certain places, right? Like anytime I'm back in the area, I'm usually trying to go out, hang out with some friends, have some drinks, whatever. And it's like, well, the only other option at that time is to get home or to or from a place is like, well, either somebody has to DD or, you're going to have to like, everybody takes like a separate Uber, and it's just like, it'd be nice to have, either a bus that you could rely on at various hours or just some way to kind of get around the frustration of, being out, having to find parking, do I park a car overnight? Like, just things like that. I feel like it would make the area a lot more accessible if they had just other options other than to everybody takes their own car, all the parking lots are jam packed, whatever it is. But aside from that, I'm trying to think. Because I feel like there's a lot going on that I might not even know about. Just because like there's so much happening. I know that you're really well connected in various different scenes. Like it seems to me though that they have just about everything that you could want in terms of the arts, right? You have music, a good social scene, parks in the area, right? Like it has pretty much everything. I don't even know exactly how it could be improved upon other than continue to invest in those public spaces and really just like the public goods that are available to people.
No, and I really appreciate you taking the time with me today. I really don't have any other formal questions other than if you have anyone else in mind that you think that I should talk to or we should interview, and then if you have any final thoughts that you want to throw down.
I have a few people actually. I know one of my friends, Dimitri. He does like fintech, like financial technology. He's been involved in like a ton of startups. He also lives in New York. He's been out here, for the same amount of time that I have been. They're one of these
He's from Allentown?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
He's from Emmaus originally. Is it just Allentown? Or are you expanded to like?
That's really what we're focusing on. People that are from Allentown, in some way, shape, or form. But I mean, if he lived in Allentown or in the area, went to school in Allentown, I'll take a perspective if you want to connect us.
There's also, do you know Asa Craig?
Know the name more than I know of him. I think
it's also my sister. Sophie's yelling at me to say.
Any of them, I mean, I don't know any of them really that well to the point that I would reach out myself. So if you thought so and you wanted to make an introduction, connect us over text or whatever, and we could take it from there. I'm happy to do so.
Well, listen, I don't know how many, people you're looking for, if this is just going to be like an ongoing.
Yeah, kind of at this point, I don't exactly know either. Definitely is going to be ongoing throughout the year. So we'll be taking a bunch of people. We're trying to get a lot of perspectives. And so we just did 30 minutes and we might take like 5 seconds from this whole video. You know what I mean? So we'll just kind of see how everything starts coming out of the wash once we start putting it together. We're just trying to lay the groundwork and get the raw footage at this point.
Yeah, I think it'd be really interesting, through this network that you're building to kind of open it up to just the youths, right? Like I didn't really know anybody involved in law, right? And I feel like that's the first like step in carving your path is to kind of recognizing that you have resources around you.
Yeah, no, that's the idea. That's the whole idea of our group, and you bring up a really good point because we're making a big video with a lot of different people in it, and chopping up different series. But we're also going to be taking different proof points from different questions that are asked and understanding how individual different people answer them. And we'll be releasing different smaller segments that are just individuals, and so there'll be a lot of different formats that come out, and you can kind of chop that up. And if there's like, for you, for example, if someone's interested in how do I become a lawyer, and this is someone that could, may be able to help out and answer some of your questions, even hop on a quick Zoom, talk about whatever. And so that's what we're really aiming to do coupled with it's an important year locally, federally. I mean, every year is important, but this year, particularly locally, we got a mayor's race coming up. We got city council people on the docket, and we have a really progressive push, as I think generally the nation has seen over the past year. Certainly here is holding in Allentown and trying to get a little bit better representation in and around politics and the people that are doing and shaking and making and moving. So really appreciate your time here today. And yeah, I'll let you go. Get back to your evening.
Thanks for having me. Sophie says hi.
Yeah, and I'll keep you posted on snowboarding, and I will hope to see you both there.
And if not then, very soon. Let's make the magic happen. All right, peace.
All right, peace.